Shir HaShirim is one of the most interesting parts of Torah and Tanakh. It's the story of two young lovers, a young man and a young woman, who are deeply desiring of one another. And on the surface of it, it seems like an amazing, inspiring story of two lovebirds, if you will. And each one is singing the other one's praises and constantly seeking out the other person's presence and company. But if you continue reading it, it actually quickly becomes very depressing, very sad and frustrating, because they keep missing each other. So the man is searching out this woman, and he goes to try and find her, and he goes to the fields, and he's asking where she is, and he goes to her house, and then he gets there, but she's not there anymore. And then she's looking for him, and she goes right where he just was, but then she misses him. And then she goes to open the door of her house, and he had just left, and they're constantly missing each other. And so it becomes very depressing, very frustrating, because they're so in love and they just can't seem to finally connect and actualize this relationship. And why is this so? What is the Torah trying to teach us here about relationships? And I believe that what it's trying to teach us is something that Doctors John and Julie Gottman found in their groundbreaking and profound research on the nature of healthy and happy relationships and marriages. What they found is that relationships that have what they call rituals of connection are relationships that thrive. And relationships that do not have rituals of connection are relationships that don't thrive. What does this mean? It means that so often it's very natural for a person to feel and to want that everything in their relationship, in their romantic relationship, should be romantic. It should be spontaneous. It should be genuine and authentic. My spouse should know what I want and what I need, because they should know what I want and what I need. And they should understand how I can feel good and what will make me feel loved and appreciated, because that's what they're supposed to do. And if I have to tell them that, if I have to explain to them what would help me, what would make me feel good, if we have to talk about planning a way of being connected, well, then that completely ruins the whole nature of this romantic relationship, because that's not romantic. That's forced, that's formal, that is simply going to become a routine. If we write each other a letter, a card, we do some sort of gesture of connection at a scheduled time in a repetitive way, that's no longer romantic and authentic. That's how so many people think. But what the Gottmans found in their research is that the relationships that do really well in the long term are the relationships that understand that we can't allow our connection to simply be subject to the moods of the day and to simply be prone to whatever we're feeling in that moment is how our relationship's going to be. Instead, we need to create some sort of scaffolding, as Dr. Sarah Barris would call it. We need to create some way of holding and containing the relationship so that there's consistency and there's routine in the connection that we share. And then in that scaffolding, when we create those rituals of connection, then within that, we can have moments where the more romantic, the more inspired, the more seemingly meaningful and authentic moments that are not planned can drop in. And what the Gottmans found in their research is that couples that have more rituals of connection experience less times of disconnect. Of course, they'll still have disconnect, they'll still have argument, but they find that in the duration and in the frequency and the intensity, the disconnect is less, and there's more moments of spontaneous inspiration and connectivity that's authentic and based on the feelings of the moment. So these seemingly formal rituals of routine create the context in which we can then experience a romantic relationship. And there's nothing wrong with saying, here's what would help me. Here's what would feel good for me. Here's how I can feel connected. Let's plan this. Let's talk about how we can do this. And bringing this back to Shir HaShirim, I think this is exactly what the Torah is telling us about, is when the relationship is only based on that very young kind of infatuation, that very deep and passionate desire, but it's simply desire. It is just that kind of natural attraction and obsession with one another. Then the relationship might have its moments, but it never really takes form. It never really connects. So Shir HaShirim is the story of two people who are infatuated with each other, but don't create that scaffolding for connectivity and for deep intimacy in a way that's lasting and consistent and stable. So in our relationships, what the Gottmans teach us, when I think the Torah is teaching us in Shir HaShirim, is that we need to plan those kinds of rituals of connection. That might be that once a week we take a walk together. That might be that once a day at a certain time between a certain hour of the day we send each other a check-in text. It might mean that we alternate in some sort of way of planning a date night once a week, but there are scheduled, routine, consistent patterns and repetitive, predictable rituals of connection. And that creates the stability and the scaffolding for relationships to really thrive, even in the romantic, inspired, more spontaneous and genuine ways of connection.